Hello everybody. So in my last video, I talked a lot about basically different ideas for goth gifts for the goth loved ones in your life. And one of those ideas was books. I love books, I love films, cinema, things like that. So the book that I highlighted that we are reading in my book club right now is basically The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. This is one of my favorite books. This is really fun and spooky, and it follows a guy named Dorian Gray. Dorian Gray is like a really beautiful, youthful human, and he's described as like exquisite and like gorgeous in the book. And it's really funny because even when I read the book back in the day, I always pictured him as like, even though he's described as blonde, in my head, I thought of him as with having like dark hair and like super dark eyes or super blue eyes. I don't know why. So it was interesting that the person who played him, who was played by Ben Barnes, he actually has dark hair, and he kind of looks a lot like how I would picture Dorian Gray anyway, like when I'm reading the novel. So that's interesting. I actually like the movie, I do, and I like the book. Love the book. And so basically it follows this guy, and he's painted by this dude named Basil, and the guy named Basil describes him as like this beautiful youth. And one day Dorian Gray basically he basically says, I would do anything, like he wants to stay young, and he declares that he would do anything to stay young and youthful and give anything, so like even his soul. So basically what happens is time goes on and he lives like this crazy aristocratic, like insane life. Basically he every time he's like cruel and does different things, and as he's supposed to age, the painting of him ages, and it gets like decrepit and just like horrific. And every time he does something mean, especially, it starts to disfigure like really horribly. And so here, I'll just like read you a little bit of the synopsis. When having his portrait painted, Dorian Gray declares he would give anything to stay youthful, even his soul. Dorian descends into a life of decadent excess, and while he retains his youthful looks, the portrait becomes horrifically disfigured. Oscar Wilde's only novel is a dark Faustian fable of wish fulfillment that leads to an inescapable day of reckoning. So I'm not going to tell you, like, if you haven't seen the movie or read the book, I'm not going to tell you exactly what happens, but I will tell you a little bit of what happens in the beginning of the novel. Basically, like, there's a gal who he's supposedly in love with, and and she's an actress, and she's really beautiful and young and la la la. And so basically he goes to take some of his colleagues and friends to one of her plays one night, and she does a lot of like Romeo and Juliet type stuff, and she's like really, really good and really, really talented. And this particular night she wasn't very good, and she's in love with Dorian Gray as well, and he really wants to marry her and make her his. And there's this guy named Lord Henry who's basically like filling Dorian's head with all sorts of junk. He's a total bastard. And basically he goes off and he's just like, oh, she's not talented at all. And Dorian Gray breaks it off with her and basically is like, yeah, you're terrible, I don't want you anymore. And he's just super evil and mean. And so he ends up getting word like a couple days later that she has killed herself. And basically, she was so in love with him, and he was so cruel to her that she took her life. And so following this news, he looks at his painting, he goes to look at his painting later, and he's really sad and depressed because he wanted to go back and say, oh, I love you again. And he just flip-flops a bunch on her. And so he wanted to go back and take her back, but he found out that she was dead. And so he basically goes and he looks at this painting, and he notices that the painting of him, one of the many paintings that the other guy, the painter Basil, paints of him, is starting to get like scarred and like disfigured, and just slightly. And as time goes on, it gets more and more horrifically disfigured, and it gets really good. So it's a really spooky, freaky novel, and I love it. And I love our book club because we have darkly inclined and goth people in our book club as well. So it's awesome because they are more inclined to dress up with me, and you know, and I love, it's like an excuse to wear my fancy coats, and I mean, I wear them anyway to the grocery store because I'm winter and I do things like that. And I do have casual goth days, but a lot of my day, I like to dress up. So it's like, I love doing book club stuff because with each novel that we read, I like to dress up in different styles, different goth styles, and kind of like emulate, like if it's a witchy themed book or if it's a fantasy themed book, I'll put on some fairy stuff or fantasy or dragon stuff. And if it's Victorian, I have a lot of Victorian and vampiric goth clothing. So I'm pretty stoked. And we're gonna do like a themed tea party. We're gonna do like a really beautiful tea party to go with it. And we're going to also watch the film after we discuss the book. We don't always watch the films. Actually, I don't think we ever have. But this time we wanna watch it. And I'm okay with that because Ben Barnes is really, really hot in it. And I also liked him. He was Prince Caspian. I'm gonna try not to lust too much on Ben Barnes, but he's fine. He's fine as hell. And he's, and he plays Dorian Gray. And I think he does a really fantastic job. So I don't know. Even if you think it's like a stupid, cheesy film, I don't care. He is hot. And it's a really fun, it's just spooky. And it's like, and it's not like overly spooky. I think like a lot of my friends that wouldn't like horror still like this movie and still like this, this book. So if you want a fun, classic, Gothic novel, check it out. The Picture of Dorian Gray. And look at that cover. This cover is really lovely. Like, I'm one of those people that if you have a really good book cover, dude, I'm there for it. I am there for it. I'm like, ooh, like I'll pick a book sometimes just like based on the cover art. And I just like how it's all like beautiful and like floral. It's kind of dark academia. I don't know. Anyway, I hope you guys are having a good day. And that you have a good rest of your December and a great New Year's and a great January. All right, goodbye.